The grand, opulent Vance mansion, with its soaring ceilings and gleaming marble floors, felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage to Elena Petrova. At 40 years old, Elena carried the quiet dignity of a woman who had once stood on hallowed academic ground. In her homeland, a small war-torn country in Eastern Europe, she had been a respected linguistics professor, her mind a vast library of ancient tongues and complex grammatical structures. But life, in its brutal indifference, had snatched that world away, forcing her to seek refuge and a new beginning in America. Here, far from lecture halls and dusty tomes, Elena navigated the labyrinthine demands of her new reality as a housekeeper for the Millionaire Vance family. Her quarters were a compact, meticulously kept room tucked away on the third floor, a stark contrast to the sprawling luxury she cleaned daily. Her life was simple, silent, her brilliance largely hidden beneath the crisp uniform she wore. Elena was a woman of calm demeanor and sharp intellect, her deep knowledge of languages an unseen treasure she rarely revealed. Her hands, though calloused from scrubbing and polishing, moved with an almost academic precision, and her eyes, perceptive and wise, missed nothing. She often carried a slim, worn book, its cover faded by time, perhaps a collection of classical poetry or a dog-eared Latin grammar, a quiet link to the intellectual life she had lost. Elena's day began before dawn, the silence of the mansion her only companion as she moved through its vast rooms, a phantom of efficiency. She was an expert in discretion, her presence barely registered by the family she served. But despite the relentless physical demands of her job, her mind was never truly idle. It continued to sift through linguistic puzzles, to conjugate ancient verbs, to silently translate the mundane into the beautiful. Sometimes, when she believed herself entirely alone, Elena would hum a classical melody or softly murmur lines of verse in various tongues, a forgotten Latin ode, a snippet of ancient Greek philosophy, or a gentle Sanskrit prayer. These linguistic exercises were her secret comfort, a connection to the profound intellect she guarded so carefully. She could effortlessly translate a complex phrase into a multitude of languages, a mental agility that belied her humble profession. Tucked into the pocket of her uniform, she carried a small, leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with neat, intricate script, a lexicon of obscure characters from different alphabets, a silent testament to her extraordinary talent. This quiet, almost unnoticed habit, combined with the hidden notebook, was the seed of mystery that hinted at the profound depths of Elena's intellectual prowess. One blustery afternoon, while meticulously pruning the rose bushes near the perimeter of the Vance estate, Elena heard a distressed wail coming from beyond the tall wrought iron gates. She peered through the ornate metalwork and saw a small child, no older than 5, sitting by the roadside, sobbing uncontrollably. The little girl, her clothes disheveled and her face streaked with tears, was clearly lost and utterly terrified. Elena quickly realized the child was speaking in rapid, frightened bursts of a language she recognized as a lesser-known Eastern European dialect. The girl was a recent immigrant, unable to speak English. Most passers-by simply offered helpless glances, unsure how to approach the crying child. Elena, however, didn't hesitate. She quickly unlatched the gate and knelt beside the terrified girl, her movements slow and reassuring. "Shh, Malenkaya," she murmured, using a tender Slavic endearment that roughly translated to "little one." She spoke a few more calming words in a dialect similar enough to the child's own to bridge the gap. The little girl, startled but recognizing the familiar sounds, looked up at Elena with wide, tear-filled eyes. Elena, her voice soft and steady, managed to glean a few fragmented words, enough to understand the child was looking for Mama and Dom, home. She gently took the girl's hand and, recalling a detail from her daily walks, led her a short distance to a neighboring house where she knew a bilingual family resided. Through quick, concise explanations to the startled but relieved neighbor, the child's parents were soon contacted, frantic with worry. The reunion was tearful, overflowing with gratitude. The neighbor, overwhelmed, thanked Elena profusely, marveling at her ability to communicate with the distressed child. This selfless act, performed quietly and without expectation of reward, was Elena's save the cat moment. It wasn't just about her extraordinary linguistic skill. It was a profound demonstration of her innate kindness, her deep-seated empathy, and her quiet courage in a world that often overlooked her. The morning light, usually a gentle presence in the Vance mansion, felt harsh and unforgiving as it streamed through the expansive living room windows. Catherine Vance, a woman whose youthful elegance often masked a fierce maternal protectiveness, sat across from Elena, her usually poised demeanor crumbling under a weight of palpable despair. Catherine, a millionaire by birth and by her own shrewd investments, possessed a sharp business mind, but even her immense wealth felt utterly useless against the challenges of her son's condition. Her 7-year-old son, Leo, was a beautiful, complex boy with autism. His world was one of intricate patterns and unique perceptions, but it was also a world profoundly isolated by severe communication limitations. Catherine sighed, a sound heavy with defeat. "Elena," she began, her voice tight with suppressed emotion, "I received the letter this morning. Leo, he's been rejected from the Crestwood Academy, the specialized school we had such high hopes for." She gestured vaguely at the stacks of reports and assessments on the coffee table. "They said he simply can't integrate. His communication difficulties are too severe. They believe he needs a level of one-on-one therapy they just can't provide within their framework." Catherine ran a hand through her perfectly styled hair, her eyes, usually sharp and confident, now clouded with a raw, agonizing helplessness. "We've tried everything, Elena. Millions of dollars. Therapists, tutors, specialists from around the globe. Every cutting-edge therapy, every experimental approach. Nothing has truly worked. He's still trapped, Elena. Trapped in his own world. And I don't know what else to do." Her voice broke, a raw testament to a mother's deepest fear. She felt a crushing guilt, a sense of failure despite pouring every resource, every ounce of love, into helping her son connect with the world. The conversation shifted, subtly but undeniably, to the harsh realities of their situation. Catherine explained that with Leo's rejection from Crestwood, she would have to reallocate a significant portion of the family's resources. The continuous, costly search for alternative therapies, the endless stream of consultations with specialists, the potential for new, groundbreaking research, it all required an immense financial commitment. "I'm going to have to make some difficult decisions, Elena," Catherine admitted, her gaze distant. "We'll need to streamline household operations, reduce staff to focus funds entirely on Leo's needs." Elena listened, her face carefully neutral, but a cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach. Reduce staff. The words hung in the air, echoing the precariousness of her own position. She understood the unspoken implication. Her job, her stable income, her only home in this new, bewildering country, was now at risk. The thought of being adrift, without work or shelter, in a foreign land, was terrifying. It was a visceral fear that resonated with the deep-seated survival instincts she had honed through years of hardship. The fear of losing her job, of being cast back into uncertainty, became a powerful, undeniable motivator. But it was intertwined with a profound empathy for Leo, a silent resonance with his unseen struggles. She watched him often, a small, solitary figure in the vastness of the mansion, communicating largely through repetitive movements or bursts of unintelligible sounds. She saw the flashes of brilliance in his eyes, the deep wells of unexpressed thought, and felt a connection with his silent world. This confluence of self-preservation and deep compassion drove Elena to a stark realization. She had to act. She had to do something, anything, to prove her worth, not just as a housekeeper, but as someone who could genuinely help Leo. This was her point of no return. The conventional path of seeking another menial job in a city teeming with desperate immigrants faded. Instead, a bolder, more audacious idea began to form in her mind, a desperate gamble rooted in her forgotten past as a scholar. She would try to reach Leo, using the only tools she truly possessed: her extraordinary gift for languages, and her intuitive understanding of how sounds and patterns could unlock hidden pathways in the human mind. It was a desperate, unconventional plan, but for Leo and for herself, it was the only path left. The sterile, almost clinical precision of the Vance mansion's interior seemed to mirror the cold, hard logic of its newest frequent visitor, Dr. Julian Vance. Catherine's older brother, Dr. Julian, was a renowned neurologist, his reputation built on a foundation of rigorous scientific method and an unyielding adherence to traditional medical protocols. He was a man of sharp intellect, but his mind, brilliant as it was also rigidly confined by his own convictions. When it came to Leo, Dr. Julian was a constant, unsettling presence, his pronouncements on Leo's condition delivered with an air of detached authority. He frequently dismissed any approach that veered from established medical science as unsubstantiated or anecdotal, often advising Catherine to be realistic about Leo's limitations. He was, in essence, a type B antagonist, not malicious, but a formidable obstacle, embodying the impersonal, unyielding system of conventional wisdom that stood in Elena's path. Adding to the quiet tension in the household was the subtle, yet pervasive skepticism from some of the other long-standing staff members. They had witnessed countless therapists, specialists, and miracle cures come and go, each one failing to unlock Leo's world. Their polite but distant demeanor, their knowing glances, conveyed a silent message. This too shall pass. Elena felt their unspoken judgment, the weight of their collective cynicism, creating an isolating bubble around her and Leo. Yet, amidst this atmosphere of doubt, a small, unexpected ally emerged. David, the head gardener, was a man in his late 60s, his face weathered by years under the sun, his hands gnarled but gentle. He had been with the Vance family for decades, a quiet observer of their triumphs and their unspoken sorrows. David had a profound, almost paternal affection for Leo. He would often speak to the boy in soft, melodic tones as he tended the sprawling gardens, pointing out the vibrant colors of the flowers or the intricate patterns of the leaves, even though Leo rarely responded. "He understands more than you think, Elena," David would murmur to her sometimes, a knowing glint in his kind eyes. "Just needs the right key to unlock it." David, with his quiet belief and unwavering kindness towards Leo, was a subtle but vital helper, a small beacon of hope in Elena's solitary endeavor. Driven by a desperate hope for Leo and a fierce determination to secure her own precarious future, Elena began her quiet experiment. She started by simply spending her allotted break times in Leo's playroom, a brightly colored space filled with sensory toys and educational tools that often lay untouched. She didn't try to force interaction. Instead, she began to read, not English storybooks, but passages from her worn linguistics texts, ancient poems, and even scientific articles, all in different languages. She started with the rhythmic cadences of Latin, then moved to the lyrical flow of ancient Greek, the intricate tones of Mandarin, the resonant sounds of Hindi, the guttural beauty of Arabic, the precise structures of German, the romantic whispers of French, the soulful depths of Russian, and the vibrant energy of Spanish. She wasn't attempting to teach him in a conventional sense. She was simply immersing him in a rich, diverse soundscape, believing that the sheer variety of phonetics and rhythms might somehow bypass the barriers that English had presented. One afternoon, as Elena was softly reciting a passage of ancient Slavic folklore, a piece she had often heard as a child, Leo, who had been rocking gently in a corner, suddenly stilled. His head, usually averted, turned slightly towards her. His eyes, though still distant, seemed to focus, for a fleeting moment, on the source of the melodic sounds. Elena, sensing a shift, instinctively began to hum a lullaby from her childhood, a soothing melody in an archaic Slavic dialect that her grandmother had sung to her. Slowly, miraculously, Leo's agitated movements ceased. His body relaxed, and a profound calm settled over him. His eyes, no longer distant, seemed to hold a flicker of recognition, a nascent connection. A few days later, the true breakthrough occurred. Elena was in Leo's playroom, tidying up, and quietly murmuring a complex phrase from a Sanskrit philosophical text she was attempting to translate in her mind. "Aham Brahmasmi," she whispered. "I am the universe." Leo, who had been absorbed in stacking colorful blocks, suddenly stopped. He turned, his gaze fixed on Elena, and then, with startling clarity, he repeated, Ahum, brahmasmi. Not in English, not a babble, but a perfectly articulated phrase in Sanskrit. Catherine Vance, drawn by the unusual silence from Leo's playroom, had just stepped into the doorway, her hand still on the doorknob. She froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She had witnessed countless sessions with highly paid therapists, each one ending in frustration and limited progress. Yet, here was her housekeeper, a woman with no formal training in autism therapy, eliciting not just a sound, but a coherent, meaningful phrase in a foreign language from her son. Catherine's breath hitched in her throat. She had seen the despair in Leo's eyes, the frustration in his attempts to communicate. Now she saw a flicker of connection, a spark of understanding that transcended the boundaries of conventional therapy. She watched, captivated, as Elena, unaware of her presence, gently praised Leo, her face alight with a quiet joy. This was Elias's unveiling, an astounding, unbidden display of his unbelievable auditory memory and innate musical genius. He wasn't just playing, he was recreating, note for perfect note, a complex classical piece he had only heard for a few moments and had never been formally taught. Catherine, the shrewd businesswoman who valued tangible results, was utterly dumbfounded. She had spent a fortune on scientific methods, on quantifiable progress, and yet, a quiet, unassuming woman, using nothing but her profound knowledge of language and an intuitive connection, had achieved what no expert could. She witnessed Elena not merely teaching a language, but forging a deep, almost mystical bond with her son, a connection that money, for all its power, could never buy. The implications were staggering, and a fragile, desperate hope began to bloom in Catherine's heart. The vast, opulent rooms of the Vance mansion, usually a symbol of comfort and privilege, now felt like a suffocating cage to Elena. Every gleaming surface, every echoing hallway, seemed to amplify the immense pressure building around her. This luxurious home, her current sanctuary, had transformed into an arena, where she faced not only Catherine's desperate hope, but also the daunting skepticism of Dr. Julian Vance. The very next morning, Dr. Julian Vance arrived, his presence bringing with it an air of scientific austerity. He had heard Catherine's excited, almost unbelievable account of Leo speaking Sanskrit, his brow furrowed with unconcealed doubt. "Catherine," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I understand your desperation, but we must be rational. A single word, an unexpected utterance in a dead language. It's highly unusual, yes, but hardly scientific proof. It could be a fluke, a form of echolalia, or simply a coincidence fueled by your understandable desire for progress." He turned his piercing gaze to Elena. "Ms. Petrova, I appreciate your efforts and your evident bond with Leo. However, we cannot base critical therapeutic decisions on methods that lack empirical evidence. I advise you, Catherine, to return to the established, scientifically validated therapies. Anything else is simply a distraction, potentially even detrimental." Catherine, caught between her brother's cold logic and the fragile hope Elena had ignited, looked distressed. "Julian, but what if this is something?" Dr. Julian sighed, a sound of weary exasperation. "Then prove it. Scientifically, I propose a simple test. In 2 weeks' time, Ms. Petrova, you must demonstrate that Leo can communicate meaningfully with you in a specific, agreed-upon language. If he can, if he shows consistent, intentional communication, then we can discuss further. If not," he concluded, his voice dropping slightly, "then Catherine will resume his traditional therapies, and we will have to reassess household staff needs." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air. Elena understood. This was more than just a test for Leo. It was a test of her own worth, her last chance to prove her unconventional methods, and to secure her place in this precarious world. Elena was utterly, terrifyingly alone in this endeavor. She had no formal degrees recognized in the U.S., no scientific papers, no official standing to counter Dr. Julian's skepticism. Her only tools were her vast linguistic knowledge, her intuitive understanding of Leo, and her fierce determination. She spent every waking moment with Leo, immersing him in the chosen language, this time Mandarin Chinese, selected by Dr. Julian for its tonal complexity. She didn't just teach words. She wove stories, sang songs, played games, associating sounds with textures and movements, patiently observing Leo's subtle responses. The other staff members, aware of the 2-week challenge, observed from a distance, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled pity. Only David, the gardener, offered silent encouragement, sometimes leaving a small, perfectly ripe fruit on Elena's cleaning cart, a gesture of quiet support. But the weight of the challenge, the unspoken certainty of failure hanging in the air from Dr. Julian, pressed down on Elena. The deadline loomed, a terrifying countdown to a potential future where Leo would remain isolated, and Elena herself would be cast adrift. The ultimate test arrived on the appointed day. The ornate study, usually a place of quiet contemplation, was transformed into an examination room. Dr. Julian Vance sat at a large mahogany desk, a stopwatch and a notepad before him, his expression professional and unyielding. Catherine sat beside him, her face pale with anxiety, her eyes darting nervously between Leo and Elena. Leo sat at a small table, a set of brightly colored blocks before him, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room. "All right, Ms. Petrova," Dr. Julian stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "The language is Mandarin Chinese. You have 1 hour. Demonstrate consistent, intentional communication." Elena's heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She knelt before Leo, her voice soft and steady as she began to speak to him in Mandarin, using simple commands, asking him to identify colors, to stack blocks. Leo, however, seemed to have retreated into himself. He picked at a loose thread on his shirt, stacked blocks haphazardly, and uttered only a few indecipherable sounds. Elena tried different approaches, recalling the stories she'd told him, the songs she'd sung. But Leo remained unresponsive, seemingly lost in his own world. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Dr. Julian made notes, his expression growing increasingly grim. Catherine's shoulders slumped, the hope draining from her face. Elena felt a wave of profound despair wash over her. She had failed. She had failed Leo, failed Catherine, and she had failed herself. The thought of Leo returning to his solitary existence, of herself losing her only sanctuary, was an unbearable burden. She had nothing left to give, nowhere left to turn. "I think," Dr. Julian began, his voice already tinged with a definitive finality, "that this experiment has unfortunately reached its conclusion." This was Elena's hang-by-a-single-hair moment. All her brilliance, all her dedication, all her quiet courage seemed utterly insufficient against the cold, unyielding realities of doubt and scientific skepticism. The air in the opulent study was thick with unspoken disappointment, the silence stretched taut, ready to snap. Dr. Julian Vance's pronouncement hung heavy, a cold confirmation of failure. Elena's heart plummeted, her world narrowing to the immediate, crushing despair. Her gaze fixed on Leo, whose small hands were still fidgeting with a loose thread on his shirt, seemingly oblivious. This was it, the breathless moment before total despair, the cold, stark reality of a dream dying. Just as Dr. Julian began to push back his chair, a prelude to ending the session, something incredible happened. Leo, who had remained silent for what felt like an eternity, slowly lifted his head. His eyes, usually distant, focused intently on Elena. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile, rarely seen, touched his lips. Then, in a voice clear and melodious, he began to speak. Not a single word, not a babble, but a complete, fluid sentence in Latin. "Elena," he began, his voice resonating with an unexpected maturity. "Puer sum, librum amo, stelle mecum sunt." I am a boy, I love the book, the stars are with me. He continued, describing a passage from an ancient Roman poem Elena had recited to him days ago, articulating his feelings about the verses, about the beauty of connection, about hearing the stars in the silence of his world. Dr. Julian Vance froze, his hand hovering over his chair. His jaw, usually set in a firm line, dropped open in sheer astonishment. Catherine Vance gasped, her eyes widening, then overflowing with tears. Tears not of sorrow, but of profound, overwhelming joy. She didn't understand Latin, but the meaning of Leo's sustained, coherent communication was unmistakable. A dead language, dismissed by many as archaic, had become the unlikely key to unlocking her son's voice. The elegant study, once a stage for doubt, was now filled with the sound of a miracle. Elena, from the brink of despair, felt a wave of exhilarating relief wash over her. Her eyes, brimming with unshed tears, locked with Leo's, a silent communion passing between them. The sheer brilliance of his unexpected linguistic leap, his ability to not only recall but express himself in a language few understood, was staggering. Leo continued to speak for another minute, a torrent of carefully constructed Latin phrases, expressing thoughts and feelings he had never been able to articulate before. When he finally paused, a stunned silence descended upon the room, thicker and more profound than before. Dr. Julian Vance was the first to move. He fumbled for his phone, his hands visibly shaking, and began recording, his face a mask of bewildered awe. All his rigid scientific principles, all his skepticism, crumbled in the face of this undeniable phenomenon. Catherine, her face streaked with tears, rushed to Leo, pulling him into a fierce, loving embrace. "My boy," she sobbed. "My brave, wonderful boy." Dr. Julian, regaining some composure, approached Elena, his voice hushed with reverence. "Elena," he stammered, you've done the impossible. This is a genuine breakthrough. How did you achieve this?" His tone was utterly devoid of his previous condescension, replaced by a humbling acknowledgement of a profound mystery. "This isn't just a linguistic ability, Elena. This is a profound connection, a method that has bypassed every traditional therapy we've attempted." He looked at her with newfound respect, his scientific mind already whirring with the implications. "Elena," he said, a new energy in his voice, "I want to propose a collaboration. This needs to be studied. We could revolutionize the field of autism therapy. Will you work with me? Not as a housekeeper, but as a lead researcher, a partner." A profound sense of vindication washed over Elena, not just for herself, but for Leo. All the silent struggles, the hidden talent, the whispered skepticism, it had all culminated in this moment of undeniable triumph. Her unconventional methods, fueled by compassion and deep knowledge, had succeeded where millions of dollars and countless experts had failed. She looked at Leo, now smiling and babbling contentedly in Catherine's arms, then at Dr. Julian, whose face was alight with genuine scientific curiosity. "Yes, Dr. Vance," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I will." The millionaire mom had caught her housekeeper teaching her autistic son in a way no one could fathom, and everything had indeed changed. The triumphant silence in the study slowly gave way to an atmosphere of profound, almost dizzying relief. Dr. Julian Vance, his face still a canvas of awe, was already pulling out his phone, not to end the session, but to frantically call colleagues, his voice hushed with a newfound urgency. Leo's unexpected linguistic breakthrough was a seismic shift, transforming not just his future, but the entire dynamic of the household. The Vance mansion, once a gilded cage for Elena and a silent world for Leo, now hummed with the quiet, exhilarating possibility of a revolution. The news rippled through the inner circles of the medical community like a shockwave. Dr. Julian Vance, once a bastion of conservative neuroscience, became Elena's most vocal champion. He openly admitted his previous skepticism, presenting Leo's case as groundbreaking evidence of neuroplasticity and the power of unconventional therapeutic approaches. In a widely circulated medical journal article, co-authored with Elena, he wrote, "We were too confined by our own definitions of communication. Ms. Petrova, through intuition and profound linguistic mastery, unlocked pathways we, with all our technology, had overlooked." His public acknowledgement and enthusiastic advocacy led to a significant shift in the discourse around autism research, opening doors for more holistic and personalized approaches. Many of his peers, initially skeptical, were forced to reevaluate their own rigid methodologies, inspired by the undeniable success of Elena's work. The subtle cynicism from the Vance household staff vanished, replaced by open admiration and respect for Elena, the quiet housekeeper who had achieved the impossible. With the weight of the communication barrier lifted, Leo blossomed. He began to engage with the world in ways Catherine had only dreamed of. His conversations weren't always in perfect English. He fluidly moved between Latin, Mandarin, and other languages Elena had introduced, sometimes mixing them in a delightful linguistic tapestry. Catherine, witnessing Leo's joy and newfound ability to express himself, was overcome with gratitude. She not only ensured Elena's position was permanent and highly compensated, but she also designated a significant portion of the Vance family's philanthropic funds to establish a new research initiative. Elena, now formally recognized for her expertise, became the lead researcher for this cutting-edge program, dedicated to exploring linguistic pathways for nonverbal and minimally verbal individuals with autism. Catherine also funded Elena's journey to recertify her professorship in the U.S., paving the way for her to eventually open her own research center. One quiet afternoon, months after Leo's breakthrough, Elena sat in what was now her dedicated research office within the mansion. The room, once a formal parlor, was transformed into a vibrant hub of books, linguistic charts, and advanced neuroimaging equipment. Leo, now engaging in more complex forms of play, was constructing an elaborate tower of magnetic blocks, occasionally murmuring instructions to himself in flawless Greek. Catherine sat nearby, watching her son with a peaceful smile, a stark contrast to the anxiety that had once defined her. Dr. Julian Vance, now a frequent and welcome visitor, entered, carrying a stack of academic papers. "Elena," Dr. Julian began, his voice warm with respect, "your latest paper on linguistic immersion for pre-verbal children is revolutionary. The data is compelling." He gestured towards Leo. "He is living proof." Elena smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "I never imagined my old knowledge could find such a profound purpose here. It was simply about finding a way to connect, a way to listen." Catherine reached out, gently placing her hand over Elena's. "Elena, you didn't just teach Leo to communicate. You gave him a voice. You taught me that sometimes the most profound solutions don't come from the most expensive institutions or the most accredited experts, but from the most unexpected places, guided by patience, intuition, and pure, unwavering kindness." Dr. Julian nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Indeed, my scientific mind was too rigid, too focused on traditional parameters. You opened my eyes, Elena. You proved that the potential of the human brain and the power of human connection are truly boundless." A deep, abiding sense of peace settled over Elena. It was a calm born not just from the resolution of her own precarious situation, but from the profound joy of seeing Leo thrive, of having her life's purpose rediscovered in the most unexpected way. This was her new calm, a serenity that flowed not from the absence of challenges, but from the profound knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be, using her extraordinary gifts to unlock voices and bring light into a world that had once seemed muted and unreachable. 5 years later, the name Elena Petrova resonated not just within academic circles, but across the globe. No longer the quiet housekeeper navigating a hidden existence, Elena was a celebrated linguistics professor and a groundbreaking researcher, heading the pioneering Voices Unlocked Institute. The institute, located in a beautifully renovated wing of the Vance estate, was a testament to her revolutionary work, a vibrant hub of research and therapy dedicated to understanding and fostering communication in individuals with autism, especially those with diverse linguistic abilities. Her numerous published papers had reshaped the approach to language acquisition in neurodivergent children, earning her international acclaim and solidifying her legacy as a true innovator. Leo, now a bright and articulate 12-year-old, was the Institute's most profound and joyful success story. He conversed effortlessly in 6 different languages, fluidly switching between English, Latin, Mandarin, and others, often delighting in the subtle nuances each language offered. His ability to express himself had unleashed a brilliant, inquisitive mind, allowing him to thrive academically and socially. He was a vibrant, active participant in the world, his laughter echoing through the halls of the Institute. Catherine Vance, Leo's mother, had become Elena's most steadfast partner and friend, her initial despair transformed into boundless pride and a fierce dedication to the Institute's mission. She had channeled a significant portion of her philanthropic efforts into the Voices Unlocked Fund, ensuring the Institute was always at the forefront of research and could provide its groundbreaking therapies to families regardless of their financial circumstances. Dr. Julian Vance, once the staunch skeptic, was now Elena's most ardent scientific collaborator. He often lectured alongside her at international conferences, eagerly presenting the undeniable data and case studies emerging from their joint research. His perspective had shifted profoundly. He now championed interdisciplinary approaches, readily acknowledging the limitations of rigid traditional methods and advocating for a more holistic understanding of the human brain. He and Elena had co-authored several seminal papers, pushing the boundaries of neuroscience and linguistics. David, the gentle gardener, now retired, was a beloved figure at the Institute, frequently visiting to bring fresh flowers from the Vance gardens and share quiet moments with Leo, marveling at the boy's transformation. One sun-drenched afternoon, a jubilant crowd gathered in the newly constructed Communication Gardens at the Institute, a multisensory outdoor space designed by Elena, filled with interactive linguistic elements and tactile pathways. The occasion was the global launch of Elena's latest book, The Unspoken Symphony, Unlocking Minds Through Language, a memoir interwoven with her groundbreaking research. Elena stood at the podium, her voice clear and resonant. "This institute," she began, her gaze sweeping over the diverse crowd of parents, researchers, and children, "is more than just a place of learning and healing. It is a testament to the belief that every voice matters, that every mind holds a unique symphony waiting to be heard. It is proof that sometimes the most profound connections are made not through traditional means, but through unexpected pathways, forged by kindness and the courage to see beyond perceived limitations." She paused, her eyes welling with emotion as she looked at Leo, who stood beside Catherine in the front row. Leo, now a confident young man, stepped forward, a wide smile on his face. "Professor Petrova taught me," he said, his voice articulate and strong, "that even if you can't hear words, you can hear a heart. And sometimes, the oldest words can unlock the newest worlds." He then recited a passage from Elena's book, a poem about finding one's voice, in flawless, emotive Latin, followed by a playful translation into Mandarin. The audience erupted in applause. As the cheers subsided, Elena stepped down, a profound sense of fulfillment settling over her. Catherine embraced her tightly. "You've given him everything, Elena," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Dr. Julian approached, a proud smile on his face. "You changed everything for us, Elena. You truly did." Elena looked across the vibrant garden, at the children playing, at Leo confidently chatting with a new student in French, his face alight with connection. She saw the flourishing lives, the opened pathways, the silent battles won. It was a beautiful, thriving reality born from years of quiet perseverance and an extraordinary gift. This was her second spring, a vibrant, blossoming future, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, the revolutionary impact of understanding, and the boundless potential unleashed when one kind heart chooses to listen and truly see. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.